The sun had barely risen over the dusty, winding roads of a small, forgotten village nestled deep in the African countryside. Cracked clay homes lined the uneven paths, their faded exteriors whispering stories of hardship and resilience. The air was thick with the scent of burning wood and early morning sweat, as women with calloused hands prepared the day's porridge, and barefoot children chased each other under the orange hue of dawn.
Amidst the clamor of a waking village,
there was one hut, more worn than the rest, that seemed to sigh under the weight of sorrow. Inside that hut lived Amina,
a young woman of 23,
with eyes far older than her years. Her days were long, her nights longer. Her brother Musa, 4 years younger and paralyzed from the waist down after a childhood illness, lay on a thin straw mat near the window. His bright mind was trapped inside a broken body, and the absence of medical care meant he would never walk again, or so everyone believed. Amina's mother had died in childbirth, and her father, broken by grief and poverty, had wandered off one day and never returned. Left alone to care for her disabled brother, Amina worked tirelessly, doing odd jobs in the village, fetching water, cleaning, farming, anything that earned a few coins or a handful of millet. Yet despite her suffering, her face remained gentle, and her spirit unshaken. Every day after her work, Amina passed by the market square, a place of noisy bartering and suspicious eyes. 4 months now, an old beggar woman had appeared there, seated beneath a dying acacia tree. Her clothes were little more than rags, her silver hair tangled like the roots of an ancient tree. She never spoke, only held out her shaking hands to passers-by, who, more often than not, ignored her or worse, hurled insults. But Amina saw something in the old woman's eyes, something sorrowful and deep, like a river that had seen too many drownings. Though Amina barely had enough for her and Musa, she began bringing a small portion of her evening meal to the old woman. It was not much, some mashed cassava or a few slices of roasted yam, but it was given with warmth. "You do not have to do this," Amina, a village vendor, once said as he watched her kneel beside the beggar. "That one's just a curse in disguise."
"Ze all bring nothing but bad luck."
Amina smiled faintly, brushing off his words. "A full stomach does not care who filled it," she replied. Weeks turned to months. Rain came and went. Still, Amina continued her silent act of kindness. The beggar woman never said a word, just nodded once each time Amina left food. Sometimes, on the hardest days when work was scarce and Musa had cried from pain until nightfall, Amina found herself sitting beside the old woman, resting her head on her knees.
One stormy night, the wind howled like a wounded beast,
and the rain came down in sheets. Amina had returned late from a nearby farm, soaked to the bone, exhausted and aching. She found Musa shivering in his sleep, his blanket soaked from a leak in the roof. As she tried to dry him, a knock echoed on their flimsy wooden door. Startled, Amina opened it and gasped.
There stood the beggar woman,
her frail body barely standing against the wind. "I have nowhere to go," the woman rasped.
Her voice cracked like the crackers.
"Please," without hesitation, Amina stepped aside. She offered the old woman the only other mat they had, gave her dry clothes, and shared the last of their food. That night, as the wind raged and the village shivered, a strange warmth filled their little hut. Amina fell asleep beside her brother, unaware that the next morning would change everything. When she woke, sunlight streamed through the hole in the roof, casting golden rays on Musa's mat. But it was not the light that made her gasp. It was Musa sitting up, his legs tucked beneath him, his face radiant. "Amina," he whispered, trembling. "I felt something. A fire. A light. I can feel my legs. I think I can move them." Tears filled Amina's eyes as she watched him slowly shift his feet. He winced, then moved again. It was clumsy and weak, but it was movement. The old woman was gone. Her mat empty. Her clothes folded neatly by the door. The villagers came running when news spread. Some claimed it was a miracle. Others whispered of spirits, of gods disguised as beggars. But Amina knew. A week later, Musa walked with faltering steps across the village square. The people who once mocked Amina now bowed their heads in shame. The vendor who once warned her offered free vegetables. Even the chief's wife came, apologizing for ever ignoring her. Amina's life transformed. Musa's recovery gave her the freedom to start a small stall at the market.
Her simple food, made with love.
Attracted more than customers, it attracted respect. Her stall became a business, then a brand. Within a year, she had built a small home, with proper walls and a clinic room for other children like Musa. And every week, on the same day, Amina walked to the acacia tree, placed a small plate of yam beneath it, and whispered, "Thank you."
No one ever saw the old woman again.
But sometimes, in the early hours, a warm breeze would stir the leaves, and Amina swore she heard a voice say,
Kinten is never wasted.
What began as a single meal to a forgotten woman became a legacy. Amina's story spread beyond the village, inspiring others. Schools taught her name. Children learned to give. And in the hearts of those once too hardened to care, something began to change. Because in a world where so many walk past, one girl stopped. And that changed everything. It had been 2 years since Musa walked for the first time, and their lives had blossomed in ways Amina never thought possible. Her once humble food stall had become a village landmark, known not just for the warm stew and sweet roasted plantains, but for the story behind it, the miracle that started with a single act of compassion. People traveled from neighboring villages just to meet her, to taste her food, and to ask about the night everything changed. Some came out of curiosity. Others came out of need, hoping for a miracle of their own. Amina never claimed to have answers. She simply smiled, welcomed them, and offered a hot meal. Her clinic, though simple, was often full. Children with disabilities.
Women with sick babies.
Old men with wounded pride. She took them in with open arms. Sometimes all she could offer was clean water and comfort, but she gave it without hesitation. And slowly, kindness began to spread like fire in dry grass.
The village changed.
Where once suspicion and gossip ruled, now generosity and cooperation flourished. The same vendor who once mocked the old beggar now organized weekly food drives. The chief, inspired by Amina's story, started a fund to repair broken homes and sponsor young students. Even the grumpy blacksmith, who had never said a kind word to anyone, built swings for the village children. And yet, not all changes were welcomed by everyone. Whispers grew in the shadows. She is too lucky, some said. No one gives that much without wanting something in return. What if it was witchcraft? Spirits do not bless for free. One man in particular, Cato, a bitter ex-soldier turned loan shark, watched Amina's growing influence with narrowed eyes. His small business built on others' desperation had started to crumble as villagers helped each other more and borrowed less. He would lost control. And control was the only thing he had left. One evening, as Amina was closing her stall, he approached her. "You think feeding people and smiling makes you some kind of saint," he sneered. "Kindness does not pay debts. And miracles," he spat the word, "do not last forever." Amina looked up at him calmly. "No one has to lose for others to win." "Cato," he scoffed and walked off. But the cold in his eyes lingered. That night, the wind blew strangely. Not like before, not with warmth, but with a chill that crept into bones and hearts alike. Musa, now taller and stronger, stood at the window, watching the trees sway uneasily. "Amina," he said quietly.
"Do you remember the old woman?"
She turned. "Every day. I dreamed of her last night," he whispered. But she was not under the tree. She was somewhere else. Underground. Trapped. Amina frowned. "What do you mean?" He hesitated. She said, "Something's coming. Something we started without knowing." Before Amina could ask more, a sharp knock rattled the door. Outside stood a young boy, drenched in rain, holding a letter sealed with red wax. "It is for you," he said, then ran off. Amina opened the letter with trembling hands. The words inside were written in fine, old-fashioned script. "Kindness opens doors not meant to be opened. Be careful what you let in." There was no signature.
No name.
But at the bottom of the page was a symbol she recognized immediately: 3 intertwined circles. It was the same symbol carved into the bark of the acacia tree where the beggar used to sit. The next morning, the village woke to a mystery. The acacia tree, ancient and withered, had fallen in the night, though there had been no storm. Its trunk split clean down the middle, revealing something shocking inside: a set of stone steps leading deep underground. The villagers gathered in awe and fear. "Amina," the chief said, "this was beneath your tree. What do you know of this?" She did not answer at first. Her gaze was locked on the darkness below. She felt something stir, not fear, but recognition.
"I need to go down,"
she said finally. Musa grabbed her arm. "Then I am coming with you." The villagers protested, begged them not to go. But Amina's heart was firm. With torches lit and courage clutched tightly, she and Musa descended. The air grew colder as they stepped into the earth. Walls lined with old carvings, stories of healers, of spirits, of people who had given all to help others and were rewarded, or punished. It was a shrine,
a forgotten place of power.
At the end of the path, they found her. Not flesh and bone but stone. A statue of the old woman, standing tall, arms outstretched, eyes closed in peace. Around her feet were offerings, ancient coins,
Trinquets, drillés flowers.
And on the wall behind her, words were etched in old tongue. But Musa translated slowly. To give without asking is to awaken the old pact. Kindness binds.
End ons bund.
The giver must walk the path until the end. Amina felt the weight of it then. This was no ordinary beggar. She had given to something older than time. And now, she was part of it. A sound echoed behind them. Not a voice. A presence. And then a whisper. "Will you continue to give, even when it hurts?" Amina turned. Her voice steady. "Yes." The light from their torches flared. The statue's eyes glowed for a moment, then dimmed.
The whisper faded.
And the ground trembled softly, like a sigh of contentment. They climbed back up into the morning light, changed but unbroken. The villagers waited, breathless. "There is nothing to fear," Amina said, "but everything to remember." From that day on, a new tradition began. Every year, the village held a day of giving, where no one asked, and everyone shared. They called it the Day of the Tree, and at its heart stood Amina, no longer just a girl with a story, but a guardian of something greater. But far beyond the village, in the depths of the forest, other statues stirred. Because kindness, once awakened,
ripple farted than we know.
And some ripples become waves. It had been nearly 2 years since Musa took his first steps and the village learned the power of kindness. The once quiet square where barefoot children played now buzzed with travelers.
Drowned by the tale of a girl who fed a beggar and delayed a cripple.
Amina's food stall had grown into a bustling eatery,
known far beyond the hills.
Its wooden sign, carved by Musa himself, read from kindness, strength. People came not only to eat, but to seek blessings.
They touched the doorstep where the old woman stood,
whispered prayers under the acacia tree, and begged Amina for advice. Many left with more than full bellies, they left with softened hearts. But with every rising sun came shadows. It began with a traveler from the capital. A sharp-eyed man named Sefiu,
with sleek boots and a too perfect smile.
He claimed to be a writer, gathering stories for a book. But his questions were strange. Did you ever find out who the old woman really was? Are you sure it was not a trick of the mind, some trauma-induced hallucination? And this sudden prosperity, surely there is more to it than cassava and yam. Amina, always calm, answered with grace. Kindness has a way of returning. That is all I know, but Sefiu did not leave. Days passed, then weeks. He hovered near the stall, eavesdropped, took notes. And then one night, Musa found him sneaking around the back of their home. Amina confronted him. "Why are you really here?" Sefiu's mask slipped.
I do not believe in miracle. I believe in secret.
"And I think you are hiding one." He was asked to leave. But the damage had been done. Rumors began to fester. Some said Amina made a deal with a spirit. Others claimed she poisoned her customers with enchanted herbs. Jealous vendors whispered that she would use black magic to heal her brother and charm the crowd. It stung more than she cared to admit. For Amina had only ever given what she had: work, food, and love. Musa, now 17 and stronger each day, tried to defend her. He had started teaching other disabled children how to paint, their simple art lining the clinic walls like sun rays. But even he noticed the change. Fewer visitors came.
The chief grew cold.
The acacia tree was vandalized, its branches snapped, its bark scratched with cruel words. Witch. Liar.
Trickster. Then came the storm.
It was a night too much like the one from years before. Thunder cracked the sky.
Rien lâchait the village like a curse.
Amina sat alone, staring at the embers in her hearth, heart heavy. Suddenly, a knock. Soft. Then louder. Then urgent. She opened the door and there she was. The old woman. Or someone who looked like her. But this time, her eyes were not sorrowful. They were burning. Alive.
And strangely, angry.
You fed me once. Child, the woman said. Her voice deeper, stronger. But kindness does not erase balance. Light given must be earned. Are you ready to pay the price? Amina blinked, stunned. I do not understand. You will, the woman whispered, and vanished into the dark. That night, Musa fell ill. Worse than before. His limbs grew cold. His breath shallow.
The village healer could do nothing.
His paintings stopped. His laughter vanished. And Amina, desperate, returned to the acacia tree, but it was empty. No warm breeze. No voice. Just silence. The village seemed to breathe again. The air lighter, filled with cautious hope. Musa's steps grew steadier, his laughter beginning to return like a soft melody. Amina's heart swelled with relief, but a shadow lingered at the edge of her joy. One evening, as the sun dipped behind the distant hills, a familiar chill swept through the village. Underneath the acacia tree where Amina had once left her offerings, a faint glow pulsed. And then she saw her. The old woman, wrapped in the same ragged cloak, but her eyes now burned with a strange intensity. She smiled, but it was not the gentle smile Amina remembered. It was a smile that held secrets, warnings, and a power that made the air tremble. You returned, Amina whispered.
Fear and curiosity battling inside her.
The woman's voice was low, almost a whisper carried on the wind. The balance has shifted. Child. You accepted the gift, but the cost must be paid. What cost? Amina asked, her voice trembling. I gave everything I had. The old woman stepped closer, and in the flickering light, her form shimmered between flesh and shadow. The heart root healed your brother's body, but it awakened something old, a debt to the spirits, a debt that must be settled.
Suddenly, the ground trembled.
And from the depths of the earth,
a dark mist curled like fingers,
creeping toward the village. The elders gathered, chanting ancient prayers, but the mist pushed forward relentlessly. Amina felt a cold grip on her heart. The kindness that had saved them now threatened to unravel everything. Desperate, she turned to Mama Juma, who revealed the final truth. To protect the village, someone must offer their own light, their own soul to the spirits.
Only a purat can calm the shadow.
All eyes turned to Amina. The price of kindness was clear.
That night, standing once more beneath the acacia tree,
Amina faced the spirits. She thought of Musa, of the village that had come to believe in hope again. With a steady breath, she offered herself. A soft light enveloped her, and the shadow retreated,
dissolving into the earth.
When dawn broke, Amina was gone. But in her place lay a single glowing seed, a promise that kindness, even at the highest cost, would forever root the village in hope. Musa, now strong and whole,
planted the seed beneath the acacia tree.
From it grew a mighty tree, its branches reaching toward the sky, a living testament to sacrifice, love, and the power of a single act of kindness. Months passed, and the mighty tree beneath the acacia grew tall and strong, its leaves shimmering with an ethereal glow.
Visible even under the moonlight.
The villagers gathered there often, seeking comfort and strength from its presence. It had become a symbol not just of Amina's sacrifice, but of a future rooted in kindness and courage.
Musas tout beneat the triwanki afternoon.
His fingers gently tracing the rough bark. He remembered his sister's soft smile, her unwavering faith even in the face of danger. Though she had vanished, her spirit lived on in every whispered breeze.
Evry but d'un leaf.
The village began to change in ways no one had imagined. Children learned to care for one another, helping the elderly and the weak. Strangers were welcomed with open arms. The market thrived, and even distant towns sent visitors.
Drowned by the story of the girl who gave everything.
But more than that, Musa knew the true legacy was not the tree or the prosperity, it was the heart of a single girl who dared to believe that kindness could save lives. One evening, as the sun dipped low and painted the sky with streaks of gold and crimson.
A gentle brise rustled the leaf.
For a brief moment, Musa thought he heard a familiar voice carried on the wind.
Kind never fad. It lives within us all.
With a renewed spirit, Musa dedicated himself to caring for the village and carrying forward Amina's mission. The clinic he helped build flourished, providing healing for those who needed it most. The stories of courage and compassion spread far beyond their small village, inspiring others to believe in the power of one. And though Amina's physical presence was gone, her light, the spark ignited by one act of kindness, continued to burn brightly.
A beacon for generation to come. Because some team, the greatest miracle are born from the simplest act of love.